on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. It's Monday morning, and it feels like it, especially if you're a Lions fan and a Ravens fan. We should have a consolation game between the Ravens and the Lions. That'd be great. More fun. No Taylor Swift. Coming up at 7:35, Richard Goldberg will join us, senior fellow at Foundation Defending Democracies. And then at 8:05, our friend Kash Patel. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning. Joining us now is Joe diGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. And here we go, Joe. We've got a $83 million. I love that it's $83.3 million in damages for E. Jean Carroll. What's the point? Extra. Just throw another $300,000 in there. 83.3. How do they even work that out? Joe, they literally changed the law in New York to remove the statute of limitations just so E. Jean Carroll could get this headline, just so Democrats could get this headline and a guilty verdict against Donald Trump. This is actually incredibly dangerous, isn't it? The lack of decorum and discipline and justice in the judicial system.
Well, this is lawfare in its worst form. Let's remember why we have statutes of limitation. The reason statutes of limitation exist is because they want to protect people from being sued after evidence is lost, people's memory fades, witnesses die, papers are lost, documents are destroyed. The reason we have statutes of limitations is that people have to bring lawsuits within a reasonable period of time so that the other side has a fair chance to defend them. This law was changed specifically to allow some sexual assault and other cases to be brought 30 years after the event. In this case, E. Jean Carroll could not remember the date. She couldn't remember many of the key details that anyone who was allegedly subject of a rape would, quote, never forget. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, this was really egregious because the targeting of the amendment in New York state law was directed at one person, Donald Trump. It smacks of ex post facto denial, certainly the denial of due process. Now, whether or not the Court of Appeals, which is the Second Circuit in New York, will recognize all these infirmities and do something about it, like dismiss these cases, which is what they should do, because I think this extension of the statute of limitations in New York was unconstitutional and denied Trump and others due process. But, right now, what you have is a federal and state judicial system in New York that has one thing in common. It hates Trump, it has an animus toward Trump, and it's going to do everything it can to harm him and his opportunity to be president again. This is not a good thing for the United States in any sense of the word.
What a lot of people forget, too, is that there was this sort of effort on the part of Never Trumpers to make this happen. And they brag about it. George Conway, Molly Jong Fast, gave E. Jean Carroll the legal advice, introduced her to the lawyer, encouraged her to file this lawsuit, essentially to bring down Donald Trump. So there is some collusion here that not a lot of people remember, that this is definitely sort of yet another Never Trump scheme to hurt him.
Well, there isn't any doubt about that either. This was clearly designed to harm him. The change in the New York law was designed to get Donald Trump, to allow this specific lawsuit to be brought. Now, you can't have a country functioning that way where changes in state law are made to affect one person. It just can't be. And whether or not the Second Circuit will recognize that and do something about it in terms of the denial of due process for Donald Trump here remains to be seen. I just think that the American people obviously don't tend to focus on things like this. They see it as a story. It's interesting. It's Donald Trump again, and they take a somewhat interest in it. But the key here is that this affects everybody because these laws apply to everyone, even though Donald Trump is the person that they're aimed at. In fact, Many other lawsuits have been brought under this statute of limitations waiver, and other people have been legally harmed by the existence of this statute.
Yeah, there's always this bigger picture problem here, as they move heaven and earth just to go after Trump, but then they open up these floodgates of breaking precedent, and then the rest of us will suffer from it. And that brings us to the Fani Willis situation down in Fulton County, where now you've got the Fulton County supervisors are actually starting to investigate her misconduct, and now the Georgia State Senate and the General Assembly have moved forward with creating a new resolution that they've passed that will have them investigate prosecutorial misconduct. This will be painted as political payback. These are just Republicans going after her as a Democrat, which is rich, considering her entire action is just political as well. But again, what does this all lead to? Does this is it meant to just negate things in the voters' minds so that they can say, oh, well, it's just all politics and it's not real? Because Donald Trump and, frankly, Republicans who are running in 2024 as well, they're all going to have to suffer some kind of major political damage because of this.
Well, I think that's right, Larry. And the problem for everyone is trying to get recompense or get a fix on this or find out how you can do something about it is very, very difficult because the process is slow. And one way to do it is exactly what the Georgia State Senate is doing. They've decided that they have the authority under the Georgia State Constitution to investigate the conduct of a local prosecutor, Fani Willis. And so they're doing that, and they've established a special select committee to investigate the goings-on inside that prosecutor's office and the relationship between her and the individual she hired to be her special prosecutor. With whom she spent a tremendous amount of personal time traveling around the globe on money, presumably, while it's fungible, some of which had to come from the funds paid for by the county of Fulton. So this is very difficult for people to understand. They go in and out. Sometimes they throw up their hands and they say, there's nothing I can do about this. Right. And sometimes they realize that there is something they can do about it. They can vote out people who do things like this, which in this instance for the last 3 years has been nothing but Democrats going after Donald Trump's Republicans and conservatives.
Yeah, just a real quick question. Hunter Biden's sugar bro is now threatening a lawsuit against Jonathan Turley. Turley is saying that it's, just an effort to silence his critics. I mean, what do you make of this latest sugar bro act?
Yeah, this is the guy who's, by the way, been paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to fund Hunter Biden's.
He's the one who was smoking on the balcony.
Mr. Morris.
Yes.
Or Norris, I think his name is.
Morris, yeah.
He's the lawyer from Hollywood who has been assisting Hunter Biden. He is now a public figure. He does not have the right to sue. Now, he can sue. Anybody can bring a lawsuit. He's never going to recover a dime against Jonathan Turley, but Jonathan Turley is going to have to get a lawyer to represent him because he's not going to represent himself. So he's going to have to pay out legal fees. But Jonathan Turley will be able to do something because of the nature of, assuming that Norris does this and sues him, Norris will be subject to legal fees that Jonathan Turley has to incur because it's probably going to be ruled that this is a lawsuit brought in bad faith. And I think it's probably being done in an attempt to silence Turley, which, of course, is never going to happen. I mean, Jonathan Turley's not going to be quiet because this guy threatens him with a lawsuit. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, Joe, can you stay with us for just one more segment? I hope you can. I always ask, assuming that you can, but I never want to presume. Because
we never say no to WMAL and its listeners.
That's how you end up in a promo. That's Joe diGenova. We'll stay a couple more questions on this because it's so degrading to our society, and there are calls for Donald Trump to come in and basically use all of these same tactics against Democrats, and I'm very enticed by that as well. But at the same time, I don't know if that improves the matter, and I want Joe to chime in on that as well, because we really do need to get to a place now in this country where the justice system actually stands for justice and isn't a political weapon one way. I know that's naive, but we need to get there somehow. So Joe diGenova is going to show us how we can do it in a moment. First, it's 7:15.
WMAL, making sense of the border, because laws either matter or they don't. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
We continue with Joe diGenova. I saw Hillary Clinton and some other Democrats on the media over the last 3-4 days saying, if Donald Trump wins the election, he's promised to use the Justice Department against his political enemies, which, I love that they're shocked about that, considering the fact that that's literally what they've been doing. If people broke the law, they should be dealt with. But at the same time, Joe, help me out. How do we get to a point where we're past this and we actually get a Justice Department and an FBI and a U.S. Attorney's network around the country that's actually going after bad guys, rooting out real corruption, and isn't just used as a tool for political purposes where the American people don't even believe what they're saying anymore or what they're doing? Or am I so naive? Has it always been like this? And this is just, at a heightened level?
No, it's never really been like this before, especially at the federal level. Joe Biden, beginning with Barack Obama, brought a new kind of political corruption into the federal law enforcement system. Look at the conduct of James Comey. Look at the conduct of Chris Wray, the current FBI director, his apparent indifference to just about anything that matters to the integrity of the FBI. You can't imagine someone being the FBI director today and allowing the things that have gone on, like the targeting of traditional Catholics, quote unquote, for the ways that they worship. It's unfathomable to me that the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, has remained almost totally silent about most of this. And then he does this nauseating incantation that the law is equally enforced. We're very objective. Politics never enters into it, when the American people know precisely that Jack Smith exists for one reason, to prevent Donald Trump from running for president or becoming president. There was no need to have a Jack Smith, a special counsel. All of this should have been handled either civilly or through negotiations with the former president. But the Biden administration decided it was going to up the ante. It was going to change the rules, which is what Democrats always do. When they don't like the rules, they want to change them. When they don't like the Constitution, they want to amend it. When they don't like the Electoral College, they want to get rid of it. Things that have lasted for 250 plus years are now supposed to be all bad. Due process is no good anymore. The presumption of innocence isn't good anymore. Listen, if Donald Trump is lucky enough over all of his foibles to become president of the United States, he should find the finest people he can find to run the FBI, get rid of Chris Wray immediately on Inauguration Day, to run the FBI, to head the Department of Justice, and all other federal law enforcement organizations. By the way, something that fascinates me as a former United States Attorney for D.C., if there's not a single person who's listening today who can tell you who the director of the Drug Enforcement Agency is. Nobody knows who that person is. Now, wouldn't you think, with fentanyl pouring across the border, that you would see the face of this person every other day screaming and yelling about fentanyl? And the reason that person isn't known is because they can't get on and complain about it because their boss, the president of the United States, is allowing these drugs into the country. Listen, there could be a miraculous change in law enforcement with a new president, a Republican president, whoever that is. That's what it's going to take. There has to be a house cleaning at DOJ and the FBI, the Drug Enforcement Administration, Treasury. All these agencies need to be headed anew by people who are professionals, not the people who run them now.
It's so interesting that you say that about Drug Enforcement Agency because my good friend Udom Dillon used to, under Trump, be the head of that agency, and he was out there all the time. He was doing a lot of media. He was talking about things. But I just want to mention also, there's a coalition of former FBI officials that just issued a warning about a new and imminent danger for the U.S. across the southern border. Maybe that's a reminder of, these FBI officials used to be pretty great.
It's it's not a new danger. It's a danger that's been existed from Inauguration Day of Joe Biden when he eliminated all of the rules that President Trump had set in place that protected us and shut down that border. I'm delighted, by the way, that the 51, these are real honest people, these FBI. I'm not quite sure the total number, but these are not the 51 former intelligence officers who said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. This is a group of former FBI officials, counterintelligence and otherwise, who said that the open border is a disaster for reasons of drugs and, more importantly, from their perspective, terrorism. We don't know how many terrorists have been let into this country. And to listen to this moron White House press secretary act as if nothing's different, that everything's the same. By the way, this is the part that bothers me more than anything else. It's the lying. The lying by Biden, the lying by Karine Jean-Pierre, the lying by the admiral from the National Security Council. I mean, this stuff gets into the body politic, and it is corrosive because people then begin to think that everybody in public office
Right.
is a liar. That is corrosive to the body politic. But these folks don't care. They really don't. They hate Trump so much, and they love power so much that they are willing to do anything, including lie repeatedly to the American people about who's responsible for this problem at the border. Every death from fentanyl in this country is at the foot of Joe Biden, the vice president, the press secretary, and all of the people in enforcement in this country. By the way, you never hear a word from anybody in no leaks from DOJ, none from the FBI, none from DEA about how appalled the rank and file are about how the president is allowing this to happen to the country. That is an impeachable offense. People get all their hussy and fussy. Oh, we can't talk about impeachable offenses. The president of the United States should be impeached. Whether or not he's removed from office is irrelevant. He should be shamed. He should be told he's a liar, that he has allowed people to be raped on the border coming across. He's allowed drugs in. He's allowed terrorists in. And we are just moments away from a terrorist attack that Joe Biden, the biggest moron president in history, has brought to us.
Joe diGenova is why I wake up on Monday mornings.
Me too.
And I'm guessing we're not alone. Joe, thanks. Always good to talk to you.
You bet. God bless America.
Amen. It's 7:24.